God hath herein hiding, whom I do adore. As by these bare shadows shapeth nothing more. See, Lord, at thy service, Lord, I see
Peace and blessings to you all. We are coming here live from Wapaton, North Dakota. So I am doing a parish mission here. And for those of you who are unaware of Catholic practice, basically, I come down, I preach at all the masses this weekend, and then I give three talks, one tonight, that's already done, and one on Monday night, and one on Tuesday night. And if you're thinking, wow, boy, those talks would sure be something nice to hear, I gave the same talks about 3 weeks ago at my home parish, Holy Cross, and those talks are available on my YouTube channel. So if you like hearing me talk, then that would be a way that you could hear me talk some more. Before we get into the chat, I see we've got Andrew here. I'm going to start off with just a little note about Catholic social teaching. I'm sure at least some of you would probably have caught the live stream on Grail Country yesterday. They had Nate, the host, obviously, and they had a couple of interesting characters there, all Catholics, and it was on this whole Jordan Peterson versus the Pope thing on Twitter. And, you know, Jordan Peterson and the Pope didn't really come up all that much. I think that was just flashy framing for talking about the issues of what social justice is. Now, when I entered seminary, right, imagine me with hair up here, none here, a little bit younger, a little bit skinnier. If you had talked to me about Catholic social justice, I would have been immediately suspicious of that. Would have thought, what are these people going on about social justice and Catholicism and all that? I don't know about that. It was only when I actually started to study the thing that I began to like it. And what specifically drew me in and started getting me to take this seriously is the Catholic principle of subsidiarity. If you've read Extreme Ownership by Mr. Jocko Willink, it'd be very similar to the principle of decentralized command. But the essential point there is that you've got different orders of organization in a society, in an organization, different authorities, and that insofar as it is possible, the people closest to the problem they're trying to solve should be the ones to solve it. We like to have local solutions first, rather than having universal solutions to everything. It's only when, let's say, a local authority would not be able to handle a problem that you'd have the states come in. It's only if the states couldn't handle a problem that you'd have the feds come in. That sort of arrangement. When it actually works out, it works out brilliantly. And so once I heard that was, you know, not just a periphery, but one of the key principles of Catholic social teaching, and I'm like, oh, this is actually a little bit better thought out than I had given it credit for. And so Catholic social teaching, I think, is very balanced, and it likes to balance things in tension. So the principle of subsidiarity would kind of be in balance with the principle of solidarity of the whole human race. You know, that that we should look out for each other within a certain amount, but they sort of balance each other out. And then you've got like the idea of the principle of a universal destination of human goods, that there's no one person that owns the earth unless his name's Jesus Christ. But also that private property is a natural right, and we hold these things in tension together. So I wasn't a part of the conversation on Grail Country directly, but Nate was kind enough to highlight my comments about the principle of subsidiarity and how that opened my heart to Catholic social teaching in general. You know, so I hope we can treat this word social justice with a fair amount of reasonableness and respect. And if you don't like the term social justice and you just want to say justice, that's also okay. All righty, my rant's over. And we've got friend of the show, Andrew, here. Andrew, you be back from Rome.
That's right. And Father, I know you just talked about it, but I don't know about this social justice stuff. You know, that word kind of scares me.
Uh, could I?
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, now I recognize your background on your stream,
Oh yeah,
St.
yeah.
Peter's
That's St.
Basilica.
Peter's. Yep, yep. That's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah. Why don't you? You just got back from Rome. Tell us a few highlights.
Um, well, one was we got to do this Scavi tour, where you see the bones of St. Peter underneath the basilica. And
Mhm.
another highlight throughout the entire trip was since we went with a priest, we had mass in all sorts of churches. So we had mass in all four major basilicas. His favorite was St. Paul outside the wall.
Well, that's the
Uh,
best one. That's the best one.
Is there a term
really?
for that? Like, there's a pub crawl. Is it a mass crawl if you do that?
Yeah, I believe the term is pilgrimage. But yeah, it was really cool to be able to do all that. And we did do a Latin mass while we were there. And I think if I could choose one other highlight, it would be going with our priest, just me and him, to go to, I believe the store's called Gamarelli, where they make the
Mm,
Pope's vestments. We went
mhm.
there and we went to Barbiconi, so he could
Oh, I
get
wear
like all sorts
Barbacone
of.
shirts.
You wear what?
I wear Barbacone shirts in the summer anyway.
Oh, nice.
They make
Yeah, we
really
got
nice
some
shirts.
vestments from
They're
there.
like 40 € and they last forever.
Wow. I'll keep that in mind. They
Yeah.
make vestments too, though. So he got
Yep.
a brand new alb, and I saw it today. He had it on for mass. So yeah, it was really cool.
You know,
Uh,
the cassock I'm wearing right now is an Italian cassock. It's from a little shop on the Pio Borgio called Macinelli. I
okay,
bought it off the rack and it looks great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Fits nice and everything.
Yep, yep, yep. It's a touch long on the sleeves, but you just put your hands up like this and nobody can tell.
Yeah, yeah, nice. Good to hear.
So
So
did you
yeah.
did you just drink in all of the classical architecture and just let your soul bathe in it?
Oh yeah. Oh, we went to so many churches. I think on the last day I was almost getting kind of tired of it. We like visited like 40 different churches. And the last one we walk into, I'm like, all right, here's another church. There it is. Look at all the frescoes. Wow. I was like so overwhelmed. So, yeah, I was really I took so many pictures too. I mean, a lot of people were taking pictures of like themselves in front of the church or like group photos, and I was taking pictures of like the columns, the floor, uh, the ceiling, all
Capitals.
sorts of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Nice,
So,
nice. Classic architecture student. I'm not gonna ruin this with my face.
yeah, I felt like such a tourist taking pictures of like all of the stuff in the building, but I had to analyze.
Nice. So
Yeah,
was there a little church, right? Everybody knows about the four big basilicas, but was there a
yeah.
little church that caught your heart?
Um, I think I don't remember if it was little, but I remember there was a church for Saint Andrew, I think, that I really liked.
Oh, was
Um,
it San Andreas de la Valle,
I think so, yeah. I think that was it.
the Theatine Church?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, actually, I kind of fell in love with that one too. I
Yeah.
would walk there when I had free time and to pray, uh,
hmm How long were
especially for
you
my
in
heathen
Rome?
brother Andrew.
Uh,
I had like 4 weeks. It's seminarians. Uh, big fan of Saint Andrew.
oh,
Yeah,
me too,
yeah. Good old,
for
good
obvious
old Saint
reasons.
Andrew crucified on that X-shaped cross.
Yeah. Oh, we also got to go to the North American College in Rome.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
And we got to go up to the roof and have the best view of Rome that there
yeah.
is.
I got some great photos up there.
Yeah.
Like a nice Christmas card photo that I sent out to everybody that year. and I had
Oh,
like my
nice.
sweater on and my coat on, a big old smile. I don't know if I'm ever to top that Christmas card actually.
Ooh, let's think about
Mm,
it.
Yeah, add me to the St. Andrew fans. Hey, St. Andrew, he brought Peter to Jesus. What more do you
What more
need?
can I say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
I
Laura
can't
was a part of
remember.
that conversation I was talking about. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I can't remember the. Oh, actually, you know what I really liked? We went to see Saint Cecilia's tomb. That was pretty cool. Um, I
I
guess
don't know
I
if
just kind of liked it just because I do music. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I don't know if I made it to that one.
yeah.
I mean, there's dead bodies all over Rome, so
Oh yeah. There's just so many corpses underground everywhere. Did you go to Assisi?
yeah, I did actually. I did.
Ooh.
We had a 5-day silent retreat in Assisi.
Oh wow, that's amazing. It's
Yeah,
so
so
beautiful there.
I got to look at the different what they had like the big church with the Giotto pictures in there. I
Hmm.
got to see those, and then I got to go to the big church that had the little church inside of it,
Oh
and then
yeah,
I got to
yeah.
go to one of St. Clair's convents, and I got to
Oh
do it
wow,
all in dead silence.
awesome.
All right. Bub Elvis says, bring back classical architecture with the human scale and the glorious ornaments. Humanity now has 3D printers and 5-axis CNC machines, and we have AI artists. I'm not sure
Mm.
if Bub Elvis is thinking that we need to use the 3D printers to build churches, which
Are
maybe.
you saying that we have the technology? Because I don't know if putting those together would
Technology.
make a very good make very good
You
architecture.
scientists were so caught up with whether or not you could, you didn't ask if you should.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
So the social justice thing is too juicy for me not to comment
Okay.
on.
All right. Now, Mark came in here with social justice. No need to modify justice. If you modify a virtue, it is no longer a virtue. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Don't try and play their games with their language.
So it's
Sure.
actually that's a
So,
good segue to what I want to say about it. It's originally the OG social justice is a Catholic church. We're the ones who coined the term. Specifically, it was Pope Pius XI in his encyclical, which was a response to communism. And he actually came.
Quadragesiano.
Yeah, I have it up from the Vatican if you want the link.
So I'm on one monitor today
Oh, okay.
because I'm in. So it's going to be really hard for me to share screen, and I don't know if guests can share screens or not.
Okay.
So we're going to be a little more. We're going to be a little bit limited here because otherwise we're going to get screenception going on, and yeah.
But
So here's a thought. Here's a thought on social justice. Right. We've got this concept of like the 4 cardinal virtues. And then this idea that there are sort of virtues annexed to it that kind of highlight an aspect of the main virtue while not actually capturing its fullness. And so I'm wondering if we need to have justice, social justice, be a part of justice, and you could talk of it like, you know, you could define it like justice insofar as it can be affected by a legislator or something that manages a society. Um,
it's well, it's an emergent property of just people, right? If you have a social justice as described, like what you were talking about, it being like when you have a well-ordered society, that it emerges out, right? So if you have a society of just men who are running just families and then are creating just organizations, then that's the that then social justice is the emergence justice of the justice of the virtue of the distributed cognitions, right? Or
so how
the
is that different
efficiency.
than the common good?
How is that different than? Well, I mean, it's maybe a species of the common good, if you could think of it as If you think of a family or a company of having a sort of a distributed cognition or an agency of its own, then presumably that could have some sort of virtues, but those virtues wouldn't be can actually be achieved in sort of the communist top-down method. They have to be achieved through the organic method of like
Both at the same time.
people having clean rooms.
Sure, people
Yeah.
having clean rooms and good leadership. People having clean
Yeah.
rooms and good leadership. You need both. You need both the emanation from above and the emergence from below to meet, because that's how the world works.
Well, I mean,
Now, what you're talking about,
Mhm.
this is when you're talking about social justice as an emergent property, that actually sounds a lot more to me like the common good as it is in Catholic thought.
Yeah.
So we could take an example of the fact that generally property rights are respected in the United States of America.
Mhm.
Right. So generally property rights are respected in the United States of America, and every good person benefits from that. Right.
Yes.
The fact that when you legally purchase a piece of property, that it's yours, that it's not going to be seized suddenly and unjustly by some bad actor, that actually it's a good thing that everybody shares in, right? Because everybody
Mhm.
knows this, and it actually it makes society flow, it makes money go around, it creates trust amongst people, all these different sorts of things. And so I think when you're the way you talked about it as an emergent property, I think in Catholic thought that would be more commonly thought of as the common good, emerging out of a just society, rather than calling that social justice.
Okay.
Mark is pretty insistent that virtue has to be something that comes from the top down. And then PIK. Hello, PIK. I don't know if you've ever been here before. Welcome. The problem is that the term is being used to express power in service of a regime. Yeah. And so, frankly, like, I'm probably not going to use the term social justice.
Well, it's been inverted, right? It was actually, and that's it. And because it was a new term, it was easy to separate, and an abstract term, it was easy to separate from its essence and be
Mhm.
co-opted by the enemy, which is what they do. They're always twisting language. That's why liberal doesn't mean liberal anymore, and modernist doesn't mean modernist anymore. Like it's these terms have been taken over and have taken on a new meaning that people are intrinsically now associating negatively because the brand has been co-opted, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's not the essence of liberal or the essence of modernists that people are responding to. It's the people who have co-opted it and are just abusing the brand
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
changing the meanings of the words.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I can solve just a lot of problems without using this word social justice. However,
Yeah.
we do have to say that there is such a thing as Catholic social teaching.
Yes.
And that's just basically the church's teaching insofar as it has wisdom to offer the organization of society. And so we have to have that.
Yeah, I agree with your tactic of I think that there's no sense in taking back the term social justice at this point, but
Yeah.
maybe unless you're having that particular argument about where the origins of the term is. But I think that Catholic social teaching is much healthier. But I've actually seen attempts to take that over too, or in a twisted way say that who was it? It was one of the popes the bishops who were involved with the synodal way in Germany had pointed out or said that without communism there would be no Catholic social teaching, which in a twisted sense you could be right. You could make that argument because it was Catholic social teaching was a sense, or at least encyclical, if you're using it as Catholic social justice, was a response to the rise of communism, but it's not. It was a clarification of the church's position. It wasn't actually
Right. Like it
something
would
new.
have been better that they didn't that Rerum Novarum didn't have to come in response to a whole bunch of social issues that were really hurting people, you know.
Mhm.
It's like the Rerum Novarum, that's 1891. I think it's 1891 or 1889, somewhere in that area there. And that was in response to both the rise of communism and kind of that uh, you know industrialization and the poverty that came along with that. And so Leo the 13th addressed that with that first basically like the first doctrinal address to social issues in I think it was 1891 in Rerum Novarum. And again, it was that middle path, you know. It's that middle path of, you know, not everything can be top down and not everything can be bottom up, right? Top down, that's your communism. Bottom up, that's laissez-faire free market economics. It's got to be somewhere in that middle where we've got the top down and the bottom up actually meeting each other. Never did in those terms before. So today I learned.
Didn't G.K. Chesterton say something similar to that, or that's what he was shooting for with his stupitism?
Yeah, and then he was going to be confiscating land forcefully and distributing it, which I wasn't actually all that hot on that particular program. But I think the goal of distributism, which is distributing the means of production as widely as can be managed, I think that was a really good goal. I'm just not sure about the actual program, because it was actually a party and a platform in early 20th century Britain, and it was a little bit. It was kind of it was a little radical, gonna take people's land and give it to the poor, and it didn't end up going through, but for a hot moment, you know, the distributists were in there doing stuff.
Yeah, I think his actual position, like is more spitballing the specifics, but he was sort of trying to say,
yeah, the distribution of the means of production as widely as possible. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Mhm.
We want people to have skills and capital. That's that's what everybody
virtue.
wants.
Yeah.
Skills, capital, and virtue. Yeah, but the virtue
Yeah.
thing's really up to you.
Yeah.
I guess it's all actually up to you
Well,
if you're going to hold on to.
With Marx saying that virtue is top down, I think his point is that it comes from aiming. Like there has to be an ideal or that one is aiming for, and that's where Jesus and God comes in. And I don't know if our worldly institutions all have to be aimed at God. I don't know if that's. I mean, as much as individuals need to. I don't know. I'm sort of trying to think that through. Like, I mean, like
Almost like they should.
like just a corporation. Like, is a Hershey's chocolate have to be aimed at God that way? Like, I mean,
in what way?
Sure. So I would say, insofar as they're not poisoning people and are treating their workers well, that's actually pointed at God. All right. The problem is not everyone can be skillful, and some people just want other things, which I'm fine with. That is true. So it's having capital distributed as much as possible doesn't mean that absolutely everybody's going to have access to the means of production. How does the doctrine of subsidiarity actually play out in a local Catholic parishes? I think of Michael Sator's project. Seems like something the church would be interested in supporting. I'm not 100% up on Michael's project. It sounds like empowering men to learn trades, as far as I can tell, and that's a good thing. So the doctrine of subsidiarity actually plays out in local Catholic parishes in that the bishop can't micromanage everything. And so really, it's like he can kind of give direction from above, but he leaves a lot of decision-making power in the hands of the local pastor. And so I'll give you an example that's actually pretty relevant to me is that we've got certain requirements for people who are getting married in the Catholic Church. And it's generally like, this is a requirement, and we ask everybody to do it. But if there's a good reason, then I, as a, well, not a pastor, a parochial vicar, working in the parish life, I can write a letter saying, I think it would be good for the law to be relaxed in this particular case for these reasons. And very often the bishop's, his curia, his bureaucracy will give me what I'm asking for, as long as I've got a good enough reason. I haven't been turned down yet. Now, maybe I'm just good at asking. I don't know. So I guess that's the way it would actually play out in Catholic parishes, skill and capital and virtue will come under pressure when AI and robots slowly take over all professions. But you know what profession they're not taking over? Catholic priesthood. Just saying.
You're safe.
Right.
I'm safe. There's not going to be any robot priests.
Yeah.
At least none that are validly ordained.
So
All of
so you're saying it's a real opportunity for more what do you call it? That's the term I'm looking for.
increase of vocations.
Vocations, more vocations. So what you're seeing is AI is an opportunity for increase in vocations.
There's a young man at my parish, and he's a sports writer. And he said to me very seriously, Chat GPT could probably do my job.
Oh
So
yeah.
I might be able to get him,
Mhm.
So Michael's a Protestant. Okay, we're still angry at Protestants. He doesn't want that kind of help. This is the problem with that sort of thing. It's harder to build things when you protest against structures that build. AI won't take over anything. It's a scam, honestly. It's created more jobs than it's taken over and will continue to do so. They're already working on Priest GPT. Well, I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it. You need to have a soul in order to have a character of soul to celebrate Mass. Now, I'm betting you that there's going to be guys who are having Chat GPT write their homilies. Like that's probably going to happen.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you can already, there's these homily services where you can just like get a homily every day or every week written by somebody else.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
And I don't do it because people need to listen to what I say. But I'll also occasionally, like, if I'm stuck on something, I'll listen to what Bishop Barron has to say on a particular Sunday. I'm not against doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or I'll read Thomas Aquinas's commentary on Scripture, that sort of thing. But I always like, like there was one time I was stuck for a homily on the Feast of the Annunciation, not the Annunciation, the Immaculate Conception. So I'm like, oh gosh. So I found Bishop Barron's homily. I took his basic point, but I Father Seitsified it, and I made it my own. And then nobody knew that I'd stolen from Bishop Barron. So
Nice.
Yeah. I just saw there was just today that all of Saint Henry Newman's John Henry Newman's homilies are compiled into one book. So I figure that would be a rich treasure trove. Yeah,
That's
something like 900 of them or something.
That's got to be multiple volumes, and probably one series. But I mean, that dude would go on like 50 minutes a week for his homilies, which was,
total.
Yeah, I think so. I think, especially, I mean, back in the Anglican days, yeah. And that was the amazing thing about John Henry Newman is back in his Anglican days, he had this preaching post, I think it was at Oxford, that he got paid for no matter if anybody showed up. Right? So you could just go out there and absolutely lay an egg and, still collect your paycheck, right? But he just went ham on it. And all of a sudden the students were flocking to him. And basically he would write out his entire sermon and then he would just read it off. And he was just that good that people were just like, I'm coming to this every week. And I think they were usually 30 to 50 minutes long.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good person to crib off of.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. No, I read one of his homilies on James and John, um, and their mother uh, when they approached Jesus, and the mother said, "Order that my sons sit one on your right and one on your left."
hmm
And he made this, I don't know, and he did it in this very elegant 19th century English that I'm not going to reproduce here. But like, Jesus, he didn't give them what they wanted, but he took their unformed zeal seriously, and like honored their unformed zeal. Um, and that kind of struck me because I was a young seminarian and I had a lot of unformed zeal in those days.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, that's a little homiletic nugget that stayed in there about a decade now. So
I guess it's pretty good.
It's lodged in deep.
lodged in there, stuck in there. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah. So I talked to one of the organizers for the That Man Is You program today
Mhm.
for the Canada. Yeah. So I'm thinking of starting one up for my in my parish or in North Bay. So we'll see how that goes.
You're gonna do it at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He said he was telling me that the one he does for his parish is on Saturday mornings. It's still like
Mhm.
5 in the morning, but a little more civilized on Saturdays. But I think here it might be troublesome because I'm planning to recruit from the guys who go to the Latin Mass, and they're the only Latin Mass for what is it, like I was gonna say 200 kilometers, but I guess you guys use real measurements, so it'll be like what 120 miles or more
Something like
is
that.
is on Saturday morning. So I don't know if that's gonna hurt.
Sure. So I mean, I
That's
actually
a long way away.
at our parish we've got two That Man Is You sections groups. One of them meets Wednesday nights at 7.
hmm
And they actually meet in our rectory, our priest house, because Wednesday nights at 7 we've got a lot of catechism class going on. So there's literally no room at the church for them. So they meet at our priest house, and then it's Thursday morning at 6. So
Okay.
you might be able to pull something off in the midweek. And
I'm thinking
I know
midweek.
Canada's a different place than North Dakota, but they're not that different.
hmm No, I think midweek is probably the way to go.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's sort of a relatively, I guess it's a relatively new thing in Canada. I mean, but it seems like it's really successful in the States, and I've seen everything I've seen from them so far is super positive, and no one has anything bad to say about the programs, or like actually a lot of positive things to say generally
Yeah,
about them.
I sat with the men through one of their sessions, and they had this guy. I don't really know who he was, but he was talking about St. Thomas Aquinas on anger, and it seemed like what Thomas Aquinas would have really taught. So
hmm
not going to get me to complain about that.
Yeah. Yeah, they also I saw they have a new series out on the Rosary that they just started this year.
Mhm.
And I was just sort of flipping through the thumbnails of that, and I saw Dr. Peter Kreft. So I thought, well, that's a pretty
That's a
solid
promising
source.
sign.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a sponsorship I can get behind.
yeah. So I encourage you. To check this program out. And all right, we've got
It's the
another
mark.
bald male in here. How are you doing, Mark? You're not the captain here. I'm the captain.
Oh yeah, I forgot to change my name. I always forget that. I'll fix that. I'll uncaptain myself. Okay, as soon as I figure out how. I know there's a way to do it.
I think
Pirate captain.
ellipse on your name on your picture in the corner. There's like a little preview of you, and just click on the triple dots there, and edit name.
Yeah, I will. I will edit my name. How's that? There we go. Get it all fixed. There.
There
Better?
we go.
Right.
Yeah,
You're
that's
the
better.
captain. You're the captain. No, I saw your talk with Manuel, which I thought was excellent.
Yes, that
On-
was a good
on that-
talk, I think.
On that wonderful channel, Agapic Orientation, which everybody should.
Why don't you post a link to that in the chat? I'm on one monitor tonight, so it's hard for me to do anything besides monitor this.
I will try to if it lets me. Sometimes it doesn't let you post links, but I will try to, because that I thought it was a really good talk on submission in particular, and the idea of what it means to submit in terms of the of Catholicism as such, right? So yeah, let me just post it. I forgot I can post it from here. It'll post to everything. Ha! There we go. Yeah, it's a good it was a good talk. I really appreciated it and enjoyed it. Right? Why didn't that work?
What on earth did you post?
I don't know. I don't know what the hell happened. I just grabbed the share link in the video and it didn't.
That's
I
awful,
don't know what
Mark.
was in my I don't know what was in my thingy there.
And it's making me look bad because it's under my name.
Sorry, sir. Sorry. I don't know what Windows did. My Windows machine crashed yesterday.
Oh,
Just
sorry
flat
to
out
hear that.
destroyed itself. Yeah, it
Just
hasn't
posted
been
like a whole
staying-
transcript.
Apparently, I apologize for that. I don't know where that even came from.
Computers. They have a mind of their own.
Sorry.
The reason
about
why they
that.
can't become priests.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
also
why
it-
computers can't become priests right there.
I did. Yeah, it doesn't work. I didn't. I didn't hit enter. I just pasted and it sent it, and I was like, "That's not normal. It's supposed to."
We'll just blame agile development on that.
I was talking about that all day today, actually. So yes, I was trying to explain to somebody. Oh, really? They're doing this, and he's like, "You can't develop software that way." And I said, "I know. Have you seen anything that works lately? That's why they're all trying to do agile development, and it doesn't work." So yeah. No, I thought that was a really good talk. I really enjoyed that talk. Actually, I thought what came out of it was very interesting. In terms of your journey and your personal story. And yeah, I found it very helpful. And I thought Manuel actually did a really good job with it. So
Yeah. No, I guess the big insight I took away from it, which wasn't really all that topical, but it was I didn't enjoy going to mass until I understood my own participation in it.
yeah,
And that didn't happen until I became an altar boy.
right.
So
Yeah, that was huge.
yeah, a lot of that stuff came together when I was about 10 years old. Because I had some of the doctrines floating around my head. Something we used to, when we lived in South Carolina, we would drive like 20 or 30 minutes a day to get to our Catholic school that we went to. Because, there's not a whole lot of Catholics in South Carolina. And my mom would put this tape on. It was called The Mass Explained by Father Larry Richards. And Father Larry Richards was defending the real presence of the Eucharist, so that Jesus is present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharistic species on the altar. And he literally, during this recording that he recorded in front of a live audience, he screamed at them, "It's not a symbol!" I could just look at any one of my siblings and just go, "It's not a symbol." And they'll all know exactly what I'm talking about because we listened to that
That's-
tape over and over again.
Yeah.
Oh,
So at
man.
that point, I knew that it wasn't a symbol, but I didn't know why that was important.
My
Wow.
parish priest actually did that today. So that's sort of a as part of it, because he didn't directly talk about the Eucharist, but it did come up. What was it? Oh, he's talking about receiving the Eucharist, about this your state of grace. What's the state of grace? When can I receive the Eucharist? When can I not? And then he's like, and why is it important? And he shouted, "It's not a symbol." So,
And you probably got
so-
that from Father Larry. Like I
Yeah.
was saying, all of us, we steal from each other.
yeah.
BVK is right. Teachers are thieves. You don't let anything good go. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. It all kind of crystallized and congealed and came together when I was in 4th and 5th grade as an altar boy in Norway.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can hear that story on Agapic Orientation. with Manuel
A
Post.
nice little YouTube channel with some interesting content.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's more rando style. Like if you like the
Yeah.
randos conversations that Vanderklay does, you'll probably like, the Unfolding the Soul series from Manuel, because it's very similar. Yeah, and that whole idea of participation being the thing that causes your understanding, I think is super. Like that's the thing people are missing. It's like book learning doesn't do it.
Right, because
And
I didn't get it when, like I got something when Father Larry yelled at me. It's not a symbol, right? I got something out of it. It wasn't nothing, but like that needed. It's sort of like it fit into place once I got the right participation.
yeah. Well, and book learning is really unreliable. So the thing that I learned yesterday, so we have this book club that we're doing for the Texas Wisdom Community. So we have our first Wisdom Community, the Texas Wisdom Community. It's run by Danny, and he wanted to do the Republic. So I'm reading it as we go. Right, I've never read it. I'm reading what I need to read just before the book club, so that it's fresh in my mind. Right, and I'm reading book 2. Right in book 2. And no one's ever told me this before. I've never heard anybody say this. And this to me is like mind-blowingly important. The problem of children is brought up, and the solution is censorship, by the way, which I find interesting. Nobody brings that up. And Gnosticism is explicitly explained in book 2 of the Republic. And I've never heard anybody point this out. And it's like, it's clear the bad God is there. The whole, like, it's not hid, like, it's very plain language in book 2. It's right there. No one's ever mentioned this. Are y'all missing the reading part of the reading book? Or like, I don't know what's going on. So, I mean, it just doesn't seem reliable, like how anybody could fall into Gnosticism if they've read the Republic and they understand the problem that's being posed. And scaling is right there. The problem of scaling, it's all right there.
So Plato was anti-Gnostic in book 2 of the Republic, is what you're saying?
It's not that he was anti-Gnostic. He's just pointing out the problem of Gnosticism. Like, it's the bad God, the good God, like all of that is there. The whole idea that knowledge is going to somehow pull you out or up from or whatever is explicit in book 2. It's not.
Okay.
He talks about forbidden.
So he's explicit in his support or his outline of the idea, or is he explicit in outlining the idea and then highlighting its problems and saying it's inherently flawed? I don't understand. What is he explicit?
All of book 2 is an outline of the problem of Gnosticism.
Okay.
Like he makes the case for forbidden knowledge based on children, which is the correct case, by the way. It's right, because it's easy to make. It's hard. It's harder. It sounds silly, but it's actually harder to make the case to people in a real fashion that they can understand, that say, I know things that Father Eric doesn't, and he knows things that I don't. And that further, there are things that I will never understand as well as he does. And there are things that he will never understand as well as I do, no matter what else happens, right? Because we have so much in common. Like, we're both bald and therefore super smart, right? Because everybody knows bald people are super smart, right? And so you run into that problem, but you know where that doesn't happen is with children. Like, nobody can make that case with children. Like, you can't make the case that you can explain sex to a 3-year-old the way you can explain it to a 17-year-old. Nobody would make such an absurd argument. And so he uses children to basically say, look, the poets are bad and we have to ban them all in the city. It's basically what he says, because children. And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. If that's your outline, I'm not saying the starting axioms are correct, but if that's your outline, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
he
also
amazing.
highlights the scaling problem. He says, well, let me just make the scaling point. He says you can't understand justice from your own perspective, because again, this is the desert island. If you're alone on a desert island, you don't need justice. It's useless to you, right? So in order to understand it, we have to scale it up to the city. So he scales it up to a city, right? And then you deal with the issue. So that's the scaling problem. It's like, oh yes, but then elements, because it's a larger set, some things are going to be more just than others. Like various given, like the view of justice changes, because what's just to the cobbler isn't just from the perspective of the king. It's not possible. And so all of those problems sort of spring from chapter 2, right? I mean, book 2. They're right in book 2 of the Republic, explicitly.
Okay. I think that there's justice at the familial level, though, right? I feel like as a dad, I'm usually called to render justice within the family on a regular basis.
Well, that's the problem of justice, right? That's why it doesn't scale. So justice for your family and justice for you are not the same thing. And
Mhm.
justice for the community and justice for the state and justice for the country are not the same thing. And because we only have our own perspective, we can't understand what's just to us in those other contexts necessarily. Like, I mean, maybe
Are
you
you-
can, but it's not
Are you saying that
automatic.
it's are you saying I'm not really understanding anything. Are you saying it's context dependent, or is it like so it's
It's
when you
not
say the king
merely
and the
context
cobbler or
dependent.
the family?
It's not merely context dependent. It's also context dependent, but it's also dependent on, look, in any system of any kind at all, there are winners and losers.
Mhm.
That's going to happen, right? In order to adjudicate something, if you weren't there, you don't know who hit who first. So the justice you hand down to your children if they're fighting is in some sense arbitrary, because you cannot determine the truth if you're not there.
Mhm.
You can make guesses about the truth, and those guesses might be correct, but that's incidental. And that's what people don't appreciate. It's like, and justice may be, well, you both have to stop hitting each other, and we're not gonna, you hit him 4 times, so he gets to hit you 4 times. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense. What's just in some cases might be that might be just, but in other cases it might be, no, just all the hitting stops now, and you're gonna have to deal with he hit you 2 more times. Because there's no proper adjudication. It doesn't exist, and so there's an arbitrary element to the justice, obviously. And then the thing to me is like, well, this is all obvious, but apparently not. And the Republic
Okay.
writes it all down and makes it all rather explicit.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the whole consciousness is about all about dealing with uncertainty, right? Like it's that's what we are, right? We're
The
is
limits,
is
yeah,
is
the limits of
is
us.
just
Well, that's
yeah is
that's
we
what we're not
is we
dealing with, right? We're not dealing with the fact that we're limited creatures, and that's very much the problem of humanity, right? Because
Mhm.
we're being such staunch individualists and that therefore materialists and objectivists all at the same time, that we're not understanding that these perfect views of virtues don't exist. And so when they don't work out the way we want, we modify them. We'll say social justice, right? That's an absurd way to communicate. You can't communicate functionally using a modifier to a virtue. Like, we all
Yeah.
have to strive for justice, or else those people who are not are going to be in a bad way, right? And because there's no other option. Like, we have to look higher to cooperate, or we can't cooperate. You're not going to look across and be able to cooperate as effectively as you can if you're all looking up at the same thing.
Mhm.
I don't know. So talking about people not reading the Republic and not understanding it, there is a nice part of that, or like a not so bad part of that, where I recently have gotten through most of the Confessions again, and I got more out of the Confessions of St. Augustine at the age of 30 than I did at the age of 23.
That
And
makes
so
sense.
it is kind of nice to have these books where it's just on the shelf, and every 5 or 10
Mhm.
years or whatever, I go and I revisit it, and there's actually something more there for me.
Yeah.
But
Well, there
it's
should
it's
be.
like the participation I had in the world and the transformations that
Right.
I've gone through is what's made that happen and has created
Yeah.
that space inside of me to receive new wisdom, new to me
Right. Well,
wisdom.
and that's the problem. We don't appreciate that. We think, oh, you read the book, I read the book. Now we have the same knowledge. It's like, no, that's what we're not appreciating. Like
That's
we're
book clubs would be
equating
super boring.
well, and that's
If that was the case,
materialism.
yeah, book
Well,
clubs would be
it
super
would be.
boring.
But we don't even think of it that way. Most people don't think of it that way. They think of it like, oh, I read the book and so I got right. And then what you realize, especially in a book club, is, well, you read the book and you missed all of these points, and then I missed all of these points, and then it's like, oh, and then I get to see it through your eyes, you get to see it through my eyes, etc. I mean, we have like 4 people there usually, or more, so you get to see these other perspectives. And that is way better than just reading the book by yourself. And if you try to tell somebody that, no, reading the book at the same time and then discussing it is a different experience from merely reading the book. It's not a sellable story anymore. But because we've just reduced everything down to this materialist knowledge and this, well, I'm going to give you knowledge. Like AI is going to be this reciprocally narrowing thing because it's a mirror, and it's a parasitic mirror at that. So it's just sucking the knowledge out of other places and condensing it. And that's great, except you have to keep condensing. And so eventually, if everybody uses it for their homilies, everyone's just going to have the same homily all the time.
I just ordered this Dr. Peter Kraft book that I'm super excited about getting. It's called The Platonic Tradition, and it's very much in the vein of what you're talking about. I haven't read it. I'm just reading the summary on Amazon at this point.
Mhm.
But I think that this is why I ordered it, because it's on this sort of this theme. The first of his 8 lectures, Peter Kraft defines Platonism as its big ideas, the idea of the transcendent reality that is the history of philosophies labeled the Platonic ideals and forms. In the second lecture, he briefly explores Plato's 2 basic predecessors or sources, the myths and Socrates, and then looks at 12 applications of the form in Plato's own dialogues. The third lecture covers the most important modifications to an edition of Plato himself in the Platonic tradition, Aristotle, Plotinus, Augustine, and each of who gave the forms new metaphysical address. The fourth lecture exposes the 6 Christian Platonists, 3 in the New Testament, and 3 philosophers, Justus Martyr, Bonaventure, and Aquinas. And the next 3 lectures explore the consequences of the modern abandoning of Platonism, beginning with William of Occam's nominalism as the source of nearly all modern philosophical errors, and its results in the empiricism of Locke and Hume, and the so-called Copernican revolution in the philosophy of Kant, and the so-called analytic philosophy, which still dominates English and American philosophy departments. In the 6th essay, Kraft looks at the 13 influential kinds of positivism and reductionism in modern thought and method: history, metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, sociology, politics, logic, yada yada yada. But I mean, it gets spicier from there, and I was like, he sounds like he's really onto something here.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a deep confusion with, say, the Vervaeke people, Vervaeke in particular, where he's like, well, look at all this Platonism everywhere. It's like, well, yeah, and the reason why they added on to Platonism is because it's insufficient. And so it's kind of like, well, of course they adopt. Like, what else could they adopt as the Catholic Church? Like, what other philosophical tradition was there that was surviving?
Zoroastrianism.
Well, they took the best of everything, and the best was not Zoroastrianism, right? It just wasn't. Sorry, they lose, right? So the fact that Platonism was expanded upon by the Christian tradition, should not be a surprise, although apparently this is a big shock to some people, and B, it should highlight to you that Platonism, or even Neoplatonism, it doesn't do the same thing. It's not sufficient. It doesn't hold, right? You need something more. That's why something more was added on. Like, it's not a magic trick at some point.
Plato is not enough.
Plato is not enough.
Yeah.
And abandoning Platonism is very bad.
I'll also say to Babelvis that Naruto is not enough either.
Yeah, I don't know why you want to do anything to anime. And also, by the way, there was a talk I attended years ago at a convention. This guy gave a great, probably one of the best presentations ever. Catholic symbolism is strewn about anime like you wouldn't believe. And when you start watching, you're going to go, oh, wow, it's everywhere. All of Catholicism is basically strewn around anime, left, right, and center.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I think there's actually, but I've thought about this, and I think that the actual, like, because there's a weird thing that happened in Japan with the fusion of Shintoism and Buddhism, right? And I think that they actually came up with something that very much resembles Christianity without being Christianity, with from the sort of the dialogue of Shintoism and Buddhism. And so I think that that's why you end up seeing a lot of those themes, because they'll actually sort of, like, if you press them, they'll say, no, this is from Shintoism or from Buddhism, but they came up with something that was very and maybe you could sort of like a very much Christian like without actually being Christian. And that may be why Christianity has had such a hard go of it there, besides like the brutal persecutions. That is definitely a factor as well. But I think that it is sort of like, oh, that we already have it, right? It wasn't offering them something that they really saw there. And I know, and there's a lot of analysis that has to go in this layers to it, but I think that they have a lot of those, the themes that are present in Christianity and Catholicism were already arrived at in Japan.
Yeah, it's possible that all religion converges on Jesus. Who knows?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think
that's really what the Christians believe.
I'm not a universalist, but I think that there's some truth. Like there's
I don't think that's
people striving towards God. Yeah.
Yeah, if you think like even the Catholic Church is universalist, you'd be surprised. I think their idea of universalism is not everybody else's idea of universalism, but it's certainly present, because go to an Italian Catholic church and an Irish Catholic church and a French Catholic church, and then we'll chat. Or better yet, go to one with a South American pastor. Then we'll chat. We'll chat about how the same the Catholic Church is.
Don't give up our secrets, Mark. There's got to be we have to be monolithic and unified across the world.
We are all the same.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, we are all the same. So, Xander, I got a question for you with regards Japanese religion. Do you think it's possible that a lot of ideas? So you had like this missionary presence in 16th and 17th century Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Then the emperor starts cracking the heck down on it. Brutal persecution, martyrdom, very effective. But do you think that some of those ideas might have just like gotten popular enough when people are trying to figure out what this Catholicism thing is that was being repressed by the emperor, that it kind of, like, sometimes ideas get inside of you without you
and that's part of the thing, is it could have been because of the Shinto Buddhist relationship, it could have been permeated into the Shintoism, because Shintoism is not well defined, right? It's really a conglomeration of local gods. It's sort of a naturalism, but it fundamentally they have it's a very particular local god phenomenon. So like a lot of those Christian ideas could have, like, it'd be really great to do some exploration of that, because Christian ideas could have been disseminated through the local Shintoism, and that would be overlooked by the broader Buddhist authority, because the Buddhists, like, they weren't looking, they were looking for the threats to the supremacy of the Buddhist orthodoxy, and Shintoism in of itself was not that. So it could be a way of those ideas disseminating through. There's a it is very plausible.
Because I heard a theory once that the chants, right, the liturgical chant that the missionaries had taught the locals for the liturgy actually made an impact on Japanese folk music. Like some of those melodies and tropes like migrated into Japanese folk music, and then when they discovered like Bach in the 20th century, it caught on because it's like, oh, this sounds like Japanese folk music, which is already influenced by these Western tropes that came in. So I heard that theory once, and I don't have any ability to actually verify it, but it sounds cool, so I'm not going to hold back.
Yeah. But there's there's ways that Western culture just sort of creeped in, and like the tempura is a very Japanese dish, but it has a Portuguese origin.
Mm-hmm. The year 0 is Christ's birth, decided after the fact. So yes, I would say it's the crux of all under the calendar's dominion. Don't underestimate the power of a calendar right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like how much of your life is governed by Memorial Day, Labor Day, and the academic calendar?
Yeah.
Not
Huge amount of it. Public schools, that's our religion, baby. In case you were wondering.
Summer
And-
vacation. Yeah.
So, and just sort of to add to Father Eric's theory, like there's a mirror situation in Spain, right, where the Jews were heavily persecuted, and then there were Jews who went under sort of underground as Christians, and then they the Judaism was sort of the origins of some of the traditions they practiced was lost, but the generations of families continued to practice these traditions without knowing that they were Jewish in origin, right? So they would do things like hiding the cross on certain days, and having like a Passover meal and things that they just thought were part of their Christian practice, but had really were from their secret Jewish origin. So you could actually see something similar happening in the Shintoism, where it was overtly, it was forbidden for them to actually to say that these practices were Christian. So they actually were just then integrated into the Shinto bloodstream of the country, and sort of went under the radar that way. So it's definitely a possibility. That would be if people were doing really worthwhile academic research these days, and that would be an interesting thing to pursue.
Well, maybe somebody has, and we just don't know about it because they are not letting their light shine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, that's the big problem. Yeah, it could well be that everybody noticed that there's the problem of children, the problem of scaling, and the problem of Gnosticism are in Book 2 of the Republic, and no one's talking about it, and no one's pointed it out except me. Apparently, I don't. What's going on? Yeah, and that's part of the problem. I mean, this is and the way you get hidden rituals like that, or rituals that get co-opted or whatever from is basically Tom Holland's dominion. You don't realize what you're feeding off of. You don't realize your history, where things came from anymore. And so, dominion is a good argument, but it doesn't solve the problem of meaning, for example. It's like, well, the reason why we've lost meaning, even though there's still Christianity everywhere, is because we don't know there's still Christianity everywhere. And instead of embracing it and going with it and understanding things like the liturgy and the importance of the calendar, which you also need to trade, by the way, or to grow food, by the way. So it's not like an optional thing, is because when you don't have that, you lose your connection with the past, which causes you to lose your connection to the future and your connection in the present with the things around you all at the same time. That's the meaning crisis, or rather the intimacy crisis, because you're losing the quality of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bob Elvis, I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm currently watching a Turkish historical Muslim drama TV series called Kurulus Osman about the founding of the Ottoman Empire. I'd rather watch a Catholic TV series that interesting and also wholesome. All TV series nowadays are woke, and it repulses me. I have a simple solution to your problems that you can implement at any time. Stop watching TV.
Or watch Davy and
Okay.
Goliath. There's some good, wholesome Christian
Yeah.
TV.
Chosen
Yeah.
season 3 just finished. I think that might be something to watch. If
Oh yeah, The Chosen's
Yeah,
supposed to be. Have you
Yeah.
seen that, Father Eric?
I've seen all of season 1 and part of season 2.
Is it any good? Like, should I even engage? Because Sally Joe's like, you gotta watch this, and I'm like, you guys, and you're gotta watch this. I don't have time for all this TV. I'm trying to do real work. But should I
It's-
engage?
It's pretty good. I'd say
pretty good.
that it's so what they're doing is they're taking the life of Christ and they're putting it into a multi-season drama format.
well, it's
Right?
actually
You get
presumably-
you get everything you get out of a multi-season drama format, which is you get long character arcs, right?
Yeah.
So
Presumably-
those are either brilliant if they're written well, or they're horrible if people don't know what they're doing. And I think it's actually written pretty well.
I
It
think
does take
I
liberties
heard-
with the Bible, but
it's-
there's
it's-
no way to adapt that without taking liberties. So
it's
I
called
heard a
the
rumor that the
Chosen.
original was also the same nature. It was this multi unfolding thing over the lives of people. Is that a true story?
it's called The Chosen because it's going to be focusing on the lives of the apostles, or that's the focus. And I think that it presumably it's going to go past Jesus and just keep on going into Paul, and that potentially if it keeps on getting renewed.
Nothing,
Is the
nothing goes
idea. Yeah.
past Jesus. Are you heretical? Like, come on. What are we doing here? Father Eric, are you going
Mark,
to stand for this?
Acts of the Apostles is part of the Bible, and so is Revelation. So
Oh,
I'm back.
got it.
I'm on church Wi-Fi right now. Who knows what's happening?
I'm in charge now. Now I'm the captain. Oh, I get demoted. Damn it.
So I would say it's pretty good.
Yep.
I don't have any huge complaints about it. It's really interesting though. They make a lot of hay out of the. Okay, Mark. Whatever. Am I back? Mark's frozen.
You're
right
back.
now.
Max frozen now.
Okay.
You
So
missed.
they make a lot of hay in the marketing about how they've got a Catholic priest and a Protestant biblical scholar and a Jewish biblical scholar looking at this. And so the Catholic priest, he's pretty solid. And the Protestant guy, he's probably solid enough. But I don't know about the Jewish guy they got. He doesn't really look Jewish, you know.
You can tell, right?
He doesn't. I think I know the term for it. He's not very from. That would be the
There
Jewish
we
term
go.
for it.
Hmm.
Not very pious. That's kind of how they not very observant. So
Very
basically,
practicing.
yeah, not very practicing. Yeah, basically what I'm saying is he's reformed. And Jacob
Yeah.
has not nice things to say about Reformed Judaism. So I just believe whatever he tells me because I'm not going to go check it out for myself. But looks right.
But Jacob has not very nice things to say about everything. So that's not that's like a universal right there.
Sure.
That's the
But he
problem.
always has nice things to say about Catholicism. So
Yeah,
Twice.
well, occasionally he can manage a nice thing here or there.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, if you want to watch it, I'll tell you what, there's zero cringe in it, so that's pretty good for a Christian
Yeah.
production.
and it's
Oh,
compared
really?
to the quality of television like in general these days. It's you have to compare it to the competition and not the ideal. It is stellar, so it's definitely worth watching. Keeps your attention and is what was the other required tier, wholesome and Catholic enough.
Catholic enough.
The
They handle
Jesus-
Mary
Well, yeah,
well.
that's-
And
Yeah.
the Jesus is Catholic.
Yeah.
The Jesus is the actor who plays Jesus on The Chosen is Catholic. So
Yeah,
that's
he's
something too.
getting trotted around to Catholic events now, and being made to talk about playing Jesus. So he's the new Jim Caviezel, and that's fine.
That's funny. Well, that's interesting. It's sort of it's sort of now's the time to strike for Christian TV. because the quality of TV
Oh, yeah.
and movies is so low that you used to suck, but nowadays you might actually be half decent, even under the same sucking strategy. I don't know. Strike while the iron's hot.
That is true, right? Because if they've killed entertainment by trying to jam their ideology down everyone's throat, and once you've done that, a little evangelization with your entertaining Christian television doesn't come off so bad now, right? Like if you have that secondary aim.
How did Disney kill Star Wars? Like when I went to go see The Force Awakens, right? And all of a sudden you hear the Skywalker theme and you see the Star Wars logo. Like I got emotional over that. I'm like, holy crap, this is happening, And they ruined it. They took like the strongest fan base in the world with the most recognizable marketing, and they destroyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then there's
Even
Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Well, until season 3, which is they're starting to realize, oh, this just isn't terrible, but it isn't actually good.
Well,
that was
that's
Critical
just
Drinker's
an
conclusion
opinion.
recently.
Yeah. Well, it's
I don't know.
Biblical horror movie. Possible in a good way. I have serious plans for that. Make a graphic novel first and we'll talk.
Isn't
Yeah,
isn't there
Genre.
already a horror movie about like exorcism or something?
yeah, but actually a biblical story that is horrific. What's a good like
Sodom
there's
and
the
Gomorrah?
Exorcism- Sodom and Gomorrah that as like a
Yeah,
disaster movie that might be fun.
that would be a great disaster flick. Yeah.
Like a Godzilla, except it's fire and brimstone.
Yeah, Godzilla minus the Zilla.
I mean, it could,
Yeah.
well, it could, or you could, you could, there's poetic license. You could make it a Godzilla movie. Like, it's not hard. What's in
Or you
Godzilla?
could do-
that was the theme of Godzilla, right? Godzilla was just the U.S. Like, that's all it was.
Yeah. Or you could do
Here's my idea.
could
Here's my
do-
idea. Is you follow the
Okay.
story of somebody who gets an exorcism from Jesus eventually.
from
So it wouldn't
Jesus.
be a
Oh yeah,
Bible
that's right.
story because it would have a happy ending. But I mean,
Yeah,
demons
that'd be
do.
cool. That would be good. There's some interesting
You could
characters.
go through like
That was
how
gonna
this
be my
person
suggestion.
comes in contact with the demon, how they're losing control of their body. You could
Mm-hmm.
do it. Would be a crazy one. Would be the guy who's out in the tomb and shackles can't hold him. He's just
Yeah,
smashing.
exactly.
Mhm.
That's what I was thinking. Do one of those.
Oh yeah, Lot and his daughters. Yeah,
So
that's
I
a
don't know.
different kind of horror.
You could do, but
Yeah,
Exodus,
don't do that.
you do Exodus and the angel of death coming, right? Somewhere like
Yeah, the
From
Exodus
the-
from an Egyptian's
the
perspective.
Egyptians. Exodus
could
from an
just
Egyptian
do-
perspective.
You could just do the knowledge of good and evil, like eating the apple and getting cast out of. That's horror right there. Like, wait, what? We had this
Getting old and
wonderful life,
dying.
now all of a sudden, all we did was try to read a book, and when we read the book, we were cast out. Right? Yeah, there we go. Fight the Gnosticism. At the
But they ate
same
fruit.
time.
No. It has to be like a modern retelling, Andrew.
Oh,
People
okay.
like
Yeah,
to
no, you
believe
want a
in-
modern retelling.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the book is handed out by
It's on their
an
smartphone.
academic. Right, or right, they could engage with on their smartphone. Sure, that would work. That would. Well, you should see the work that Sally Joe's doing on the virtue cards with the vices. Good stuff. Have you checked in, Father Eric? Did you see her update?
I've been
temperance?
busy this weekend. So yeah.
Priorities. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. Pay close attention to the vice at the bottom. It's quite good. It's quite good.
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad she was open to some of my suggestions on those, and I was able to help her figure out why the medievals were ordering the virtues in the way they were. She sounded pretty grateful about that.
No, she's relying on you and eternally grateful for your participation. It's not it's not as you categorized it at all. You are key to this project according to her. So please take
Okay.
that to heart, because yeah, your help is literally invaluable to the project. And she and
Okay.
I both appreciate it, because it's a very important project.
Mhm.
So what is you talked about the medievals ordering the virtues in a specific way? That sounds like a topic I would enjoy you
Yeah,
elaborating on.
and sadly, Joe knows the ordering because she's neck deep in this project, and I was just kind of consulting. But I was explaining to her that not all the virtues are the same, and that two of them in particular hold pride of place. You've got prudence as the queen of the of the
Cardinals?
cardinal virtues, and then charity is the form of all the virtues.
Yes.
So those two kind of have the pride of place, because prudence, if you don't know what is just, then you can't behave justly. If you don't know what somebody ought to have, if you don't know whether you can actually overcome an obstacle or at least have a fighting shot at it, you can't be properly brave or courageous, because you might throw yourself into something that you have no business doing, or running away from something you could easily handle. And if you don't know how much is too much or how much isn't enough, you can't be temperate. So that prudence kind of has this governing role in all of the cardinal virtues, and charity takes the place over all of the virtues, including all four of the cardinal virtues, because that's the one that actually places all of your spiritual resources and time, energy, and attention towards its final end, the glory of God and the salvation of souls, love of God, love of neighbor, all of that.
Yeah. I think that charity also has the regulating feature between like hope and faith in that as well, right? So within the theological virtues, like charity is what keeps the whole thing together, right? And if there's no charity, then like you said, there's no, he keeps the thing aiming in the right direction.
And
right?
so Sally Joe
hope
was
and faith are
wondering
not
why prudence and charity were in the middle, and then the other five were kind of around them, and I apparently cleared that up in a really good way. So because I hadn't looked at these medieval prints that she was looking at and trying to figure these things out, but she did. So thank God for artists, and thank God that we're not all artists.
Hooray.
Prudence. So I have a pedantic, well, actually, something that came out of my Catholic Dads group on Friday that's been sort of sticking in my craw a bit, and I spent a lot of Saturday contemplating it, and it's a bit of a like a technical theological issue, but it might be a little juicy. It might be just me who cares, but maybe not. So we're talking about the snake in the garden. Eden and Scott Hand's book brought it up, but it was basically the talking about Christ, or so the goodness of God, and we were talking about whether him creating Satan and giving Satan a choice whether and Adam needed a choice whether to fall or not, right? About free will. And I think the group generally agreed with the idea that, God, and there was language debate, but it was like, basically, he permitted it. He wasn't responsible for it, but he could plan it. But there was this argument that this had to be the case, that he's not responsible for the evil in the world, because then he'd be evil, or that he couldn't have planned it, because then that would make him in some way less good. And I don't think that it makes creation. My sort of response was that I don't feel that we're in a position to judge judge creation, right? It's it's like that was the problem. This is like it makes creation imperfect if this was the plan all along. And my sort of take was no, that that's putting you in a position to judging creation and judging God, and that's not right. So there was a couple of people who agreed with me. A couple of people were more on the no, perfect good. God can't do anything evil side of the equation. I was like, no, you can't judge. You're not in a position to judge creation. I don't know if you want to weigh in
Yeah,
there.
I mean, Thomas Aquinas puts it very simply and succinctly: is that God allows evil for the sake of drawing a greater good out of it.
Yeah. All
And
right.
so he created the universe. He did put free agents into it, but it's not like our freedom and his freedom actually conflict. It's like he uses our free choice, or our unrestrained choice at least, and actually does what he wants with that.
Mm.
And so you know, we can, when we talk about God not being the author of evil, it's more important to see that as like an ontological category rather than like a, I don't even know what the other category is. Why am I trying to make a distinction? It's more like a, no, God didn't create things defective, right?
Yeah.
But God is absolutely in charge and orders all things according to his will. That's inescapable. Otherwise, you get into all this crazy, you know, William Lane Craig heresy stuff.
Yes. I'm glad that Aquinas is on this, that I'm on the side of
with the
Aquinas and
Molinism
my
and
intuitions.
all this crazy Jesuit nonsense.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like God already knows. It's like your freedom is a tool in God's hands.
So here's where I was going with it yesterday, thinking about it on Saturday. Like, so, because I was sort of trying to build up my argument in a different direction. I was saying, so because we can imagine something, doesn't mean that it's possible, because I think our imagination is imperfect, right? So you
Holodecks.
Right.
Holodecks. Yeah. So we can imagine something.
Unicorn.
We can imagine a world where everyone's good, or where we think everyone's good, or a better world. But there are probably inconsistencies in our vision of the world, because it's like a holodeck, because we're just sort of like putting the good stuff all together, and we're not really seeing the contradictions and inconsistencies that creates. So we can imagine something that God would not do, or could, that is not truly possible, and therefore God didn't create the world that way, if that makes sense. So because I can make, and similar to like language, the way I can make a grammatically correct nonsense sentence, contradictory nonsense sentence, because of the way
Then you
language
could put the word social injustice together.
There you
that
go.
wouldn't be functional in the language. But you can see it, right?
Yeah.
But really, that's just a recapitulation of the point of freedom, right? If you have freedom, you have the freedom to opt out of the will of God. But that doesn't work ultimately. It only works for a little while, because your freedom is constrained by things like your life and the amount of energy you have and the things around you, right? And so freedom's always constrained, because that's how you know it's freedom, right? But there's further actual constraints, like you just don't have enough time to learn everything, even if you thought that was valuable. Like that's not an option that's available.
So actually, you can.
I'd like to respond to Lost Cause here.
Yeah, you respond to Lost Cause. I have a response to Lost Cause too, but I have to prime it, because I'm digging up a quote that I always keep on my phone.
Sure.
So you go ahead.
So there's a certain amount of we'll say death and rot that are necessary and natural. So the tree rotting in the forest, providing nutrients back to the soil, that's the sort of thing. But that's not the rot you're worried about, right? You're actually worried about the rot in humans. And so here's the interesting thing. is that the Catholic Church is, at least the common opinion, and probably 100% correct, is that the human soul is naturally immortal, and that kind of with Adam and Eve, with the integrity, the gift of integrity that they were given, their souls would actually communicate that immortality to the body. And that gift of integrity was lost when they disobeyed God, and they had God's favor withdrawn from them. And so it's natural for the rest of creation to rot, but it's actually unnatural for human beings to rot, that we were born for immortality. And God's bringing about the remedy of this through the resurrection of the body at the end of time. That God brings your soul and your body, your particular body, back together and forms a new. It's still you, but it's a new glorified body out of that, and that one is no longer susceptible to cancer, death, and rot. So that's my.
We'll all be gloriously bald.
We'll all be gloriously bald.
No.
Andrew, I know you're ashamed that you're not bald, and that's why
I refuse to admit it.
just give it time. Your hair will fall out too.
We'll see. Sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
I might not get that lucky.
So my the thing that I was going to, like, why it was sort of like I was sensitive to this is there's a Saint Thomas More is probably very instrumental in me ultimately coming to Catholicism, and I you know far more saints than I do, Father Eric, but I think that he may be unique in that he is a saint he was both canonized by the church he was martyred for and the church that he was martyred by. And that may make him unique. That he
Well, I mean, I don't think Henry VIII canonized him in the Anglican Church, but
he is
see what you
canonized in
mean.
the Anglican Church now. I don't know if it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, eventually he was canonized in the Anglican Church, and so it was like his principles was recognized, and so from his final letter to his daughter Margaret, while he's waiting in the Tower of London to be executed. This is the last two paragraphs. And finally, Margaret, I know this well, that without my fault, he will not let me be lost. I shall therefore, with good hope, commit myself wholly to him. And if he permits me to perish for my faults, then I shall serve as praise for his justice. But in good faith, Meg, I trust that his tender pity shall keep my poor soul safe and make me commend his mercy. And therefore, my own good daughter, do not let your mind be troubled over anything that shall happen to me in this world. Nothing can come but what God wills. I am very happy. I am very sure that whatever that be, however bad it may seem, it shall indeed be the best. Right. So I think that I do think that, and I maybe Catholics disagree with me, but I think that part of worshiping a supreme God is that one of the things that the consequence of that is that this is indeed the best of all possible worlds, no matter how bad it may seem to us, right?
Yeah, the optimist says this can't possibly get any worse, and the pessimist just says, "Oh, just you wait." The lost cause. The way we use the word natural is so effed up these days. So I took a philosophy of nature class my second year of religion, second year of seminary, and one of the first things we had to do was disambiguate the way we use the word nature, right? Because nature is used for like anything that happens outside, that's natural, right? Anything that happens spontaneously, that's natural. And it's like, no, that's not what we mean when we mean nature. The corruptions of the word. What nature is what is proper to me as a human being, and what is proper to each of those things. That is what's natural to them. So that was right there in chapter 1 of Father William Wallace's Modeling of Nature. Yes, William Wallace, that was his name. His book is really hard to read. He needed a good editor, and he didn't have one. But
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Well, I think that that's the ultimate problem. Is it's not just the word nature. It's all of these words have been either undefined or ill-defined, rather deliberately. Like
Yes.
this has been,
This is they do it
this
exactly.
this has been done to you. It has.
Mhm.
And that's important. Like there are forces out there, there are people out there, there are institutions out there that have either been corrupted or failed in some way, maybe innocently, to give you the proper understanding of these terms. And there's so many terms like that that it becomes a problem. One of the issues is we've reduced, we'll say, the 4 Aristotelian causes down to 1. And it's sort of a hybrid monster that's missing entirely final cause or telos, might be the way to say it. And that's a huge problem because you can't understand the world if you keep believing that things have a single cause. Nothing can ever have a single cause. There's no direct linear relationship between the event and where it began. Like that doesn't actually work. Because beginnings can have multiple endings based on a number of factors. So single cause doesn't work. And people cast everything as single cause nowadays. And this is part of the individualism, the materialism, the objectivism that we see everywhere.
Mark, if I don't cast things by single cause, then I can't invoke the wrath of the mob with a simple narrative, right? If I can say that everything is caused by racism, then I can't direct the mob to my will. Or if I can't say everything is the patriarchy or everything is whiteness, right?
Yeah. You can't use science either. And fair enough. And science has its value.
Trust
but
science.
It's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah. It's all climate change, Mark.
Let's all take a little moment tonight sometime and pray for Ann No Me, who's got to take an environmental ethics course. Environmental ethics should actually be a really good course, but because like the way we treat our common home that we all live in, like that's actually kind of important. That should be a part of justice. So
that's how the cult stacks the Gnosticism on top of the puts the Gnostic coating over the Hermetic core of the cult, right? They have the hidden knowledge is that it's actually a Hermetic cult. That's the Gnosis. But the Gnostic what the Gnostic flowery outside of the outer cult is what they cover that up with is this sort of nature Gaia worship, right? So that's what they'll sell is like it's all about we need to protect the earth. We're all
earth lovers
involved with nature, right? It's all about Gaia.
What's the uniting principle, right? Is the uniting principle Earth, Gaia, the fact that we all live on the same planet, or which is below us, by the way, even though it's bigger than us, the planet is always below us. That's the statement of gravity, incidentally, in case you were confused, the scientific statement of gravity, right? Or is it the case that what unites us is something above us and beyond us and bigger than us and outside of us in a non-material way, which is not the earth, right? That's why the virtue matters. That's why the virtue emanates down from above. And it's been interesting. We've been talking a lot about, the Galilean revolution and the impact of putting the sun at the center of the earth, at the center of the universe, rather, or at least the solar system, rather than the earth. And it actually matters. And it's very subtle why, but it actually makes a big difference. And the only thing that changes is the math used to calculate the location of the planets and stars in the sky. That's the only thing that changes.
Am I the only one familiar at all with the Catholic YouTuber Fourth Age? He does mostly comics, and mythological and analysis of Catholic. You should be checking out his channel. So Fourth Age, and he recently did a video, and I thought he made a really good point about. It wasn't necessarily about earth worship, but it was about nature worship. He made the point on nature worship that you can't have science or virtue. So it's just sounding a lot like Mark in a world where you have nature worship, because if you have nature as your god, there's a natural capriciousness that, like, you can't figure it out. Nature, like, if your gods are from that low level, they can do things on their whims or their impulse, on their pathos. So there's no sense in building or creating a science where you're trying to figure out the law if there's no lawgiver, if there's no immutable lawgiver, right?
Right.
There's no sense in aiming for anything higher if everything is just the passion is nature in blood and claw, right? And so I'm just saying.
And that's why weather
Happy Fourth Age.
forecasts are also accurate.
They are when we control them. They will be accurate once we control the carbon. Once every one of your credit card purchases is analyzed by our artificial intelligence, and we can say, no, stop, don't buy that. Then
once
we
we
will
reduce
control
the
the weather.
population down to 500,000,
Yeah.
then we'll be able to predict the weather.
It'll be great.
All right, let's do it.
No. Mark, you go at this one. You explain it why that's incorrect.
Metallurgy. What? Like,
So the point is that engineering and science are not the same thing.
yeah, engineering and
Someone
science
told
are
me-
completely different. That's the problem. I have a great video on science. Actually, I got a recent recommendation on my video on science on navigating patterns. He said, this is a great video. Really helped me understand what science is. Yes, engineering is totally different, right? Like, people think that scientists are inventors. Scientists invent nothing. Science comes after invention and before engineering, except that some engineering happens without science. So science isn't required for engineering either. Like, basically what I'm trying to tell you is, no, really, science isn't required. And you know this because science didn't exist and we did. So obviously science isn't required. It's not needed. Sorry. I'm sorry, science people. Not that it's not good to have. It's great. I'm a big fan of science, but we don't need it at all.
Yeah.
We just don't. It's
I'm
not
glad you're
possible
making
that we could have needed it.
Yeah, you're making that separation between science and engineering, which is very important. And a few
And
people
invention.
Yeah, invention. Yeah.
It's the inventors that go and discover things that science then goes and examines. And that's how you know certain things. Like, you could tell, like, if something new popped up in the world, like, I don't know, a new infection or something, you could know immediately that the science doesn't apply, because science can't apply to something that doesn't have observations yet.
Yeah.
And so if it's new, then science isn't the thing that's going to do anything about it. Not that it can't tell us anything about it, but it can't inform us about it in the way that science can inform us about things that are not new, which it can have a lot to say about.
Yeah, what science really is brutal. Like, science, what science really is, proper science, is brutal epistemic humility, right? And it is only possible if it requires if you have these inspirations or insights that you then apply. The scientific method is really then applying that epistemic humility to those insights, that you try and falsify your hypotheses in a methodical, brutal fashion, and then you never say that your hypothesis is true. You just simply say that it hasn't been proven false yet.
Well, and the hypothesis itself is not valid until somebody else has valid. Like, in other words, you can't validate your own hypothesis. It's not even a hypothesis.
Just like how you can't test your own code, right?
Yeah.
Right. You can't test your own code. It's the same. Right?
I do, and it always passes.
And that's exactly. It always passes when I test it. Well, and that's the problem. Is that the goal of science is as a method of intersubjective truth. And that's one form of truth. That's one way to get at the truth, but it doesn't get at all of the truth. And that's where people make the mistake. It's like science can't get at the whole truth. It can only give you one form of truth and a limited form of truth. And that form of truth isn't perfect. Just because 95% of the population believes it doesn't mean it will actually come to be. Hey, Ted.
So Ted is my baby brother Catholic. I found out this week. He's more baby Catholic than me. He's
Cool.
cool. Because you were in August, you said? Oh, Ted, you're muted. We can hear you.
He's muted. He doesn't love us. He's not going to talk to us. You're muted, Ted.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, sorry.
Muted.
Good. You missed my mistake. Yes, Feast of the Transfiguration last August. So, it feels appropriate. I knew Christ for a long time, and then he was transfigured.
That's awesome.
You guys talking about science?
Yeah, that was the latest topic. I'll flash my social
I think
justice
we
book
put it
that
to
I
bed.
haven't read yet. I'm gonna plug this once again, even though I haven't read it myself yet.
Ah,
Social justice isn't what you think it is. I think it's Catholic in origin. They're quoting a lot of Catholics on the back, but I mean to read it sometime.
Well,
Yeah. So,
I-
Mark, I'm curious about this, and I want your thoughts on it. Is the product of science actually just theory?
yes. It is the only possible product of science.
Yes.
Okay.
Explicitly, like it's not that is the only possible product of science.
And
Right,
sometimes
because it's the
these theories are
engineers
actually useful.
that make the theory into. Yes,
I-
and not all the time, right? Like just because you have a theory and that theory is correct doesn't mean it can be put to you. This is why I was saying it's a form of truth. Not all truth is useful. That's the other thing. Like people think just because something's
Mhm.
true, then therefore it's something we need to engage with. That can't possibly be.
I had Mexican food for dinner.
You know,
It's true.
exactly. There's lots
But there's
of truth that just
I-
has no impact on the universe. So
and something just along that, like, and on the hope and faith, sort of within the virtues, theory is always on the hope side. Like, because I think that hope and theory is on one side, is sort of one side of the left or right, and then the other side of that is faith and practice. Right, faith is intimately connected to practice, and this is something that I think people pigeon that the opposition, the evil ones who like to meddle the meaning of words, they like to pigeonhole faith into this like little thing where they say it's things that you can't prove that you believe in, but that's not what faith actually is. Faith is actually intimately connected to your practice, right? That's the ultimate test of what your faith is how are you living, what are you doing, what are you embodying into the world. That's it's like words
Now
are
it seems like hope should actually be connected to practice, because like faith is the act of believing in divinely revealed truths, the most relevant possible truths ever.
Mhm.
And then hope is seeing that that these truths that you have learned about, these promises that God has made, can actually apply to you, and that they can actually be for your benefit. And then that moves on to love, where you realize, oh my gosh, this God is unbelievably good to us. And by the influence of the Holy Spirit, you're able to begin to love him above all things, and your neighbor as yourself, not simply with natural power, but with supernatural power. So it seems like hope is actually what crosses the gap between theory and practice, at least if we're going to use a Thomistic model of the virtues, which, given that this is my YouTube channel, is preferred.
Okay. What do you mean by a Thomistic model. So
So the Thomistic model of virtue, which he got from Augustine, and that's fine. But I know it via Thomas, is that you've got this organic connection between faith, hope, and charity, right? So faith is the first contact of the soul with God, whereby you begin to know Him, and not just knowing like theoretically, but like actually having. Aquinas has a fundamentally participatory theory of knowledge, because it has to do with God's grace acting on your faculties, acting on your person there, and then it leads up through hope. You see these promises actually apply to me. These might not actually be distinct moments in time, but there's not a chronological progression necessarily, but it's a logical progression. And then that leads to the full flowering of charity, where you begin to put God up as your highest good. You begin to love Him, and all of this, and that's actually what finally properly unites your soul with God entirely.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's kind of the crash course in the first 50 questions of the Secunda Secundae.
Okay. All right. So I guess this is sort of like the point where I guess I'm a little heretical, or because
I'm not going to say heretical. I'm not going to say heretical. I'm just going to say novel.
Novel.
And I'm suspicious of new things.
I mean, it's novel. Okay, but I'm novel because I sort of see as this relationship, and I see it like the charity is like the wrestling of Jacob with God, right? As is Israel, right? That's the charitable love. And it's really the way that, like, and I with Vervaeke and his opponent processing, that's the way that we resolve the problem, because the tension between the right and the left is with Pajot, right, of hope and faith, and that brings us to the center, which is Christ, which is the perfect hope meeting the ultimate test of faith at the cross.
Now listen, if you were able to find all of that in Gregory of Nyssa, it wouldn't be new anymore.
All right. Okay. Well, I don't like being new. I liked it early on when I was talking about, because I don't like being new either. I like it better when I like think of something up and then I find out, oh, Thomas Aquinas said the same thing, and then I feel
better
much
than
safer.
I did.
Yeah, but better than I did. Then I feel much more safe and secure and warm and fuzzy, and the world feels right to me. So we know on the same page there.
I was going to say, if you're, it's interesting you're looking at this sort of connection between, and I'm sorry about the baby, but I don't know how loud that's coming in, but your connection between hope and faith and the sciences, because right in St. Paul's, I think it's first letter to the Corinthians, he says, right, you have faith, hope, and charity, and like faith and hope are going to pass away when we move out of the spatio-temporal realm of now and into eternity, and then only charity will be left. And that's related to the fact that like charity is going to be the thing that's going to be done once. That's all. Once we're face to face with God, once you have the beatific vision, there's these qualities of faith and hope that will pass away. And so when you're thinking about that sounds to me like there's some sort of like epistemological link between faith and hope and knowing, and like the kinds of knowing, but Thomas Aquinas' view of how the intellect perceives forms, and that versus the beatific vision, how we're not like perceiving God through any intermediary object, but perceiving Him as He is in Himself. And so there's this sort of.
I'm really disappointed Ted's breaking up, because like he's making some really good points that I think that are.
And the screaming baby's not going to understand any of this.
Hold on.
It's a good pose though, right there.
Yeah.
Is this?
I want a big one.
Better? Is this any better? Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Hear me? Isn't it coming through?
You might have to say like everything again.
Wi-Fi. Anyway, so I don't know where I was, but what I was saying is there's like an epistemological link between faith and hope and knowing and how we know now, right? There's a sort of incompleteness of knowledge of God that's related to faith and hope, and in the beatific vision, that's entirely resolved. And so there's this sort of sense of, let's say, of a natural analog to faith and hope in the way that science works, right? So there's this sort of, and I think you can see that on multiple levels, but there's a sort of like, what do we do with the sort of incomplete, we're only receiving things through sensate knowledge, we're not actually directly perceiving essences, right? Because is that right, Father? More or less. So there's this sense in terms of like
essences via our senses.
Right. So we're not perceiving any of them directly, right? We're like our senses perceive accidents of things. Is that right? Right. And so
yeah. But it gets at to the essences eventually.
Through our intellect.
Yeah. Through the active intellect, all that.
Through the active intellect. And so, and in some sense, like to look at sciences that way, and I'm just I'm trying to work this all out in my head right as I'm talking. In some sense, right, you have data and then you have theory, and there's a sense of we have the data, which is that sensate. I mean, that's the whole process of deductive thinking, right? You're trying to move from all these individual specific things to that theory, that thing that is that contains all of those things, that explains all of them, and yet. As I think I heard you guys riffing on, none of it's true. None of it's ever proven true. You're just never proving it false. And then because you've tried really hard to not prove it false, and then you're like, all right, well, we're going to operate with this, which is interesting that it moves into that sort of operative realm again of faith and hope, as you were saying, Father. So at any rate, I don't know, Xander, if that's at all what you're getting at with that sort of connection between faith and hope and science.
I think that's exactly. Or, I mean, I don't want to say that I don't want to claim you right away and say, Teddy, you're agreeing with me. Great. But I mean, that is getting at what I'm saying and I think that I didn't know about that connection to Paul, but I think that adds more evidence to what I'm thinking, that like when we're with God, then it will only charity will be required, because the faith and hope is like I said, like is sort of the movement back from faith and hope is only because we have this imperfect connection to God. And it's not that God's imperfect, it's that we're imperfect and we're not perceiving him and his will correctly at all times. And so sometimes we're like go with Pageau's left and right. Sometimes we're a little on the left and sometimes we're a little on the right, and we're seeing things differently. So we're a little bit more hopey or a little bit more faithy than we need to be. And then, but once you could, actually, I was watching a YouTube video today, and I don't know why this happened in a YouTube video in 2023, but the colors had separated such that it was like he had like a blue shift and a red shift on the video, and he didn't correct for it, right? And it I just wish that the image had been corrected correctly and those colors had been put into phase, so it was a perfect image. So I sort of see it in the same way, that like when we're with God, all charity will be required, because everything, like our image of Christ will be clear in his presence, and we don't need the phasing of faith and hope will no longer be required, because we will be in the presence of the perfect faith and the truest hope.
So Xander, I've got a thought with your so you've got the left hand, that's zeal, you've got the right hand, that's mercy, right?
Yeah. Well, that's more of a motive. That's a motion thing, right? So mercy is the move, where I've introduced those faces. Mercy is the movement from faith to hope, right? So you're at faith, and it's merciful. Mercy comes in because you're saying you're from the perspective of the law. You're saying, well, this person may still be good, or this person may still be forgiven, because there's still hope, right? So you're moving from faith to hope. That's mercy. And then zeal is from the perspective of the hopeful, of all the possibilities. You're instead moving, this is the thing that is good. So you have faith, so you're moving towards the motion of faith, right? You're moving towards, like, this is the thing that I need to champion, that I need to move forward. This is the path. Like, you're taking that leadership role, or that saying, it's like, this way, guys. That's the zeal. even if
Sure.
it's this guy is just you. So it's those are the motives, sort of their zeal and mercy are subordinate virtues to the actual faith and hope.
Right. And this is the thing. An
Derivative.
interesting thing is that both of those are actually passions, according to Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah.
So
I
you
would
can
agree
have
with
this
that.
passion of zeal that drives you towards an end very directly, and you can have this passion of mercy that wants to fulfill the lack inside of another person. Right. And this is how we actually experience these principles, as we experience them as passions. We don't,
Yeah.
you know, we're not calculating machines, right? So I'm
Emotion
wondering,
is motion, right? So
so I'm wondering if you don't need to just locate both of these inside of the virtue of temperance, which moderates between the two.
Right.
right.
And I
Well,
think that would put you a little more in step with the tradition that you're in.
yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So here's my Vervakian
Who is Vervaeke?
paganist, but let's talk this. Is that I see like the cardinal virtues as project as wisdom or formed from the theological virtues, right? So actually, like,
No, you can have the cardinal virtues without having the theological virtues.
you think so? Well, I guess
Yeah.
Aquinas thinks
Yep,
so.
they're
Yeah,
natural virtues. They are built up by repetition. They're not infused into you.
Okay. But are they then a form of wisdom?
That's
or-
the way we understand. That's the way we understand virtuous pagans. Is that they were just doing the right things according to their own light, and
Mhm.
they were able to develop something like courage in battle, and that's
Okay.
a good thing. And we can't say that, like, just because they're not a Christian, they don't have any goodness in them. That would be insane. Nobody would
Yeah.
ever want to believe that. And so it's like, yeah, these another name for the cardinal virtues would be natural virtues, right? They're actually just constitutive of what it means to be a human being. But faith, hope, and charity are the theological virtues, in that not only they orient us to God, but they come to us as a gift from God.
So you're saying that pagans don't have then the theological virtues, or are they?
If they're
exclusively
properly
Catholic?
pagan and they have not had justifying faith, then they would not have them. Now, the thing is that God can put justifying faith, hope, and charity into whomever he wants, and he can do it invisibly. The question is, does he? I don't know. It's invisible.
Mhm.
So we
And in that
entrust everybody
case-
in North and South America prior to the arrival of Christianity. We just have to trust that God has a plan for them. But it's whatever it is, and to what degree it happens, it's all invisible, and we can't tell whether or not they actually would have faith
or hope or charity.
It's interesting coming back to the natural virtues and thinking about them as they're the virtues that everyone is also naturally in agreement with, which is interesting. I never thought about that before, right? And especially
not
talking
everyone.
about. Sorry, let me rephrase that.
All
all honorable men, right? To steal, sort of, they exist, and to steal Lewis's language from the Abolition of Man, like the Tao, right? Like they're the way. Whereas faith, hope, and charity are at best seen as unnecessary, at worst seen as a form of foolishness in comparison to those. So there's a sense in which if you walk in the natural virtues, it's like every man like in a civilization who's wise would be like, yeah, those are the right things. Like I might disagree with you a little bit on how you're walking them out, but like everyone thinks men should be brave. Everyone thinks men should be temperate and so on. But like, does everyone think men should have hope? It's like, theologically speaking, no, not necessarily. Does everyone think charity is the right? And anyway, that's interesting in terms of like valuing those and thinking about the dialogue about like virtue acquisition, that there's just like definitely a different orientation towards the two sets of virtues. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything more to it than that, but it never struck me before.
Are the cardinal virtues still a form of accumulative wisdom then? Like they're sort of experiential in their sense, and then the theological virtues are are divinely
So
given through
the
the Holy
cardinal
Spirit?
virtues need cultivation and training, or
Mhm.
education probably is a better word for that. So if you want your child to be temperate, you need to teach them moderation in everything that they do.
Mm.
So insofar as you actually embody that and cultivate that in the people that you're responsible for forming, then it would be kind of the what was the word? What was the phrase you used? Embodiment of wisdom. Sure,
Mhm.
that's yeah. I'll roll with that. I'll roll with that. That sounds about
Yeah.
right. I mean, I would say it's in harmony with the logos. That
Yeah.
would probably be a more familiar way of putting it. But embodiment of wisdom, that's not bad. I'll take that.
Mhm.
And speaking of things that I need to take,
We
bed.
Ved
And
is
sleep,
10:30. It's
because
9:30.
I did not sleep well and I had a busy day today. So,
That's a good
gentlemen,
idea.
always good to have each and every single one of you here. Um, even Ted and Andrew, who are not bald.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
You guys have beautiful bald.
we will see.
So good night and God bless you all.
Good night.